I'm certain that you have seen some of the paintings of the famous painter. His name is Caravaggio, at least once in your lifetime. Only to mention one of his famous paintings like David and the Head of Goliath, or Taking of Christ from the Olive Garden. Well, one of his masterpieces is called The Calling of St. Matthew, in which the scene is rather gloomy and dimmed, dark. In the right corner of the room, you can see Jesus with his hand extended towards the dark room. And in the left corner, you can notice a small company of particular people looking at money placed in the middle of the table in the room. And one of them, he is probably Levi, although sitting at the table, his eyes look at Jesus and his hand points at himself rather, as if he would like to say, to ask, "Are you sure? Are you sure it's me you're looking for, sir?" The story of Caravaggio's painting links up with another great piece of art, produced by the very well-known, famous Michelangelo. And if you saw Caravaggio's picture of Jesus and Matthew, you cannot escape this very thought: how similar it is to Michelangelo's creation of Adam, which we can find in the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican, in the Holy See. And especially the play of the hands, which in both paintings really play a pivotal role. Because from the very beginning of his work, Caravaggio wanted to emphasize something of great importance, namely the unity of creation showed by those two fingers pointed at each other in a way in creation of Adam. And although that creation was affected by falling away from God's grace, by sin, by death, infidelity, if you like, yet it was never fully destroyed, fully separated, but rather by the grace of our loving God, God who was always looking out for his lost children. Now, when he comes to the house of Matthew, the same very God, when he comes to the one who does not know him really yet, this very God can ask, "Are you the one who wants to follow me?" And as we know from the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 9, the meeting with the Lord made Levi such an impact that he not only sold all of his possessions, but he also changed his very name to Matthew. Matthew, which originates from the Hebrew word Matityahu, which means the gift from God. And in that way, thus, he followed Christ, as we know from the Gospel. The story of Levi, or Matthew's calling, is of a great significance, not only because we celebrated his liturgical feast last week, just on Thursday. You see, in the person of Matthew, in his doubts and his questions, in his uncertainties, but also a very certain hope and looking for hope, we can see a reflection of today's Sunday Gospel. So today we hear another parable given by the Lord, given by Jesus. Once again, this time comparing the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God, to a generous landowner hiring the workers at different parts of the day. And that's the story. Whether they join the main group of laborers from the very beginning of the day, from the dawn, or at much later hour, the generosity of the landowner is always awesome, is always great. He treats all of his workers, every single one of them, equally. Now, I know that most of the time when we read this gospel passage, which is, by the way, Matthew chapter 20 this Sunday, we first think about these other workers who, being very unhappy for getting paid the same sum of money as those working for a shorter period of time, they make assumptions and they seriously complain. But no, today we won't think about the other ones, but rather let us think about ourselves as the first ones from today's parable. Because, you see, we often emphasize how loving, how forgiving our God is, how easily approachable, how close He is to all who call on Him, as we even say in today's responsorial psalm. And yet, at the most awaited moments, when really God makes Himself approachable, when He makes His way to overcome our limitations, even weaknesses and sins, when He approaches us to help us to make another step on that faith journey, we cannot. We decide to do nothing, to put it on another day. And think just for a moment, what would happen if Matthew, wondering about Jesus' call, would rather answer, "Nah, it's certainly not me he is looking for, all right." Or imagine if the laborers would answer to the landowner from today's parable, "Yeah, right, sure, you got us." And yet, often it's very us who reject that awesome invitation. We tend to believe in so many lies, so many catches, some empty promises given to us in the television and in the online stores. Some of them seriously so ridiculous. And when the Lord, the Creator of all, wants to reconnect that relationship, that link between us, sometimes we tend not to believe in it. That is why, I suppose, He finally says at the very end of today's Gospel that it is the last who will be first. The last who will be first, because indeed the kingdom belongs not to those who perform some dirty or even heavy work. No, the kingdom belongs to those who truly love Him. And that true love, that takes time to learn. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed my Sunday sermon, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, to share it with others. God bless you.